The whole point of being a real housewife is that you're supposed to be rich. That's the deal, that's the premise. You live in a massive house, you drive a luxury car, you wear designer everything, and you fight with other wealthy women about absolutely nothing at dinner parties that cost more than most people's monthly rent. That is the show. But what happens when the money isn't real? What happens when the mansion is rented, the designer is knockoff, and the wealth these women have been performing for cameras is nothing more than a carefully constructed illusion, held together by lies, loans, and an absolutely reckless mountain of debt? Well, as it turns out, that happens a lot more than you'd think, because behind the champagne toasts, the confessional looks, and the carefully curated Instagram feeds, some of the most iconic Real Housewives in franchise history have been completely flat broke, and not just a little behind on their bills. We're talking millions of dollars in debt, federal investigations, prison sentences, foreclosures, and in some cases, stealing from people who had absolutely nothing left to give. So today, we're going through every major case, every housewife who faked it, how they got caught, and just how deep the financial hole actually went. And trust me, some of these are going to leave your jaw on the floor. Let's start with the couple who literally went to federal prison for it. Teresa and Joe Giudice were the absolute definition of living beyond your means. From the moment Teresa appeared on the very first season of The Real Housewives of New Jersey, she was spending money like it was going out of style. There's an iconic scene from early in the show where she walks into a furniture store and casually drops $120,000 in cash. She literally pulls stacks of bills out of her purse and pays for everything on the spot. It was one of the most talked about moments in early Housewives history. But here's what nobody knew at the time. Teresa and Joe were drowning. According to court documents, the couple was roughly $10 million in debt. They filed for Chapter 7 bankruptcy in 2009, but what made their case truly criminal was what they did during that process. They hid assets from their creditors. They submitted false information on mortgage and loan applications. Teresa personally applied for a mortgage back in 2001 and falsely claimed she was employed as an executive assistant. She even submitted fake W-2 forms and fake pay stubs to make it all look legitimate. Joe wasn't any better. He forged tax returns and failed to file taxes for years. In 2013, a federal grand jury returned a superseding indictment against both of them. They each pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit mail and wire fraud, bankruptcy fraud by concealment of assets, bankruptcy fraud by false oaths, and bankruptcy fraud by false declarations. Teresa was sentenced to 15 months in federal prison. Joe got 41 months. They worked out a deal so that one of them would always be out of prison to take care of their 4 daughters. Teresa served her time and came back to RHONJ like absolutely nothing had happened. She rebuilt her brand, did cameos, wrote books, appeared on other reality shows, and hustled her way back into relevance. But the money problems never fully went away. She reportedly owed the IRS over $200,000. As recently as March 2025, reports surfaced that Teresa and her current husband, Luis Ruelas, were hit with more than $3 million in tax liens. Teresa managed to pay off her portion, but Luis reportedly still owed nearly $2.6 million. And then there's the fake designer clothing we already know about, the knockoff Balenciaga, the suspect Chanel, the Louis Vuitton hat with the botched logo. Teresa has been called out so many times for wearing counterfeit labels that an entire Instagram account exists largely because of her. The woman went to prison for faking her finances and came back wearing fake Chanel. You genuinely cannot make this up. But if Teresa's story is about reckless spending and garden variety fraud, the next case is about something far darker because Erika Jayne's financial scandal didn't just involve debt, it involved real victims. Erika Jayne joined the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills and immediately became one of the most expensive cast members in franchise history. Her tagline was essentially about being unapologetically glamorous. She had a pop music career funded by her husband Tom Girardi's law firm. She spent lavishly on private jets, designer clothes, jewelry, glam squads, and music videos. Everything about Erica screamed unlimited wealth, and for years, nobody questioned it. Tom Girardi was one of the most famous personal injury lawyers in America. He'd won a massive settlement against Pacific Gas and Electric that was literally turned into the movie Erin Brockovich. He was considered a titan of the legal world. So when his wife showed up on reality television spending millions, people just assumed the money was there. It wasn't. On November 3, 2020, Erica filed for divorce from Tom. 1 month later, a lawsuit was filed alleging that their divorce was a sham designed to hide embezzled funds. The lawsuit claimed that Tom and his law firm had been stealing money from clients for over a decade, including settlement funds meant for the widows and orphans of passengers killed in the 2018 Lion Air Flight 610 crash. That crash killed 189 people. Tom was supposed to be representing their families. Instead, prosecutors say he was funneling their settlement money into maintaining the lavish lifestyle he and Erica displayed on television. The numbers were staggering. Prosecutors said Tom diverted more than $25 million from his law firm's operating account to pay the expenses of EJ Global, the company formed for Erica's entertainment career. That's on top of the millions spent on private jet travel, jewelry, luxury cars, and exclusive club memberships. In a deposition that surfaced during the Hulu documentary The Housewife and the Hustler, Tom admitted on camera that he was broke. He said he once had about $80 million in cash, plus a stock portfolio worth another $50 million, and that all of it was completely gone. Tom was found guilty of 4 counts of wire fraud in August 2024 and sentenced to 7 years and 3 months in federal prison in June 2025. He was ordered to pay $2.3 million in restitution to victims and a $35,000 fine. The prosecutor called him a thief and a liar who conned his most vulnerable clients. The judge noted that his victims included people who had suffered severe physical injuries and families who had lost loved ones in disasters. As for Erica, she has maintained that she had no knowledge of Tom's fraud. She was dismissed from the initial Lion Air lawsuit in 2022, but the bankruptcy trustee found that $25 million in law firm funds had been spent on her company, and a trial over that amount was scheduled for February 2026. Erica has continued filming RHOBH throughout all of this, which has been a source of enormous controversy among fans. Some people feel sympathy for her. Others believe she knew exactly where the money was coming from and chose to look the other way. Either way, Erica Jayne's lifestyle on The Real Housewives of Beverly Hills was funded by money stolen from crash victims, burn survivors, and grieving families, and she wore it all on camera, like it was hers. Now, let's talk about someone whose financial downfall played out in a completely different way, but was no less devastating. Sonia Morgan of The Real Housewives of New York was once married to John Adams Morgan, a descendant of J.P. Morgan, and a member of one of the wealthiest families in American history. When they divorced, Sonia kept the Upper East Side townhouse and tried desperately to maintain the lifestyle she'd grown accustomed to. But without the Morgan fortune backing her up, things fell apart fast. In 2010, Sonia filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy, revealing that she was approximately $20 million in debt. She had about $13.5 million in assets, but her liabilities exceeded that by a wide margin. The catalyst was a failed film deal. Sonia's company, Sonia Productions, had partnered with Hannibal Pictures to produce a movie called Fast Flash to Bang Time, which was supposed to star John Travolta. The film never happened. Sonia was sued for backing out of the deal, and the financial dominoes started falling. On the show, viewers watched Sonia's townhouse visibly deteriorate. The elevator was constantly broken. The toilets were always clogged. There was brown ice in the freezer. It became a running gag among fans. But behind the comedy was a woman who was genuinely struggling to keep up appearances while her finances crumbled around her. She would talk about her international lifestyle brand and her various business ventures, but none of them materialized into anything real. It was all aspiration and no execution. What made Sonia's situation different from Teresa or Erica was the transparency of it. She wasn't really hiding anything. Everyone could see the cracks, but she kept performing the role of the wealthy socialite anyway, because that was the only identity she had left. Then there's the case of Karen Huger, the self-proclaimed Grand Dame of Potomac. Karen spent the first 2 seasons of The Real Housewives of Potomac presenting herself and her husband Ray as the wealthiest couple in the group. She famously referred to Ray as the Black Bill Gates. The couple had a stunning mansion, designer wardrobes, and an air of superiority that Karen wore like a crown. But in season 3, the cracks started showing. Well, it was revealed that Ray Huger owed over $1 million in back federal taxes. The couple had quietly sold their mansion for well under its listed price, and Karen's castmates became suspicious about whether she was actually living where she claimed to be. In one of the most iconic scenes in Potomac history, the other women literally staged a fake pizza delivery to Karen's supposed new home to see if she actually lived there. Karen tried to maintain that her personal finances were completely separate from Ray's tax issues, but the math simply wasn't adding up. She went from claiming her husband was essentially a black billionaire to dodging questions about why they had downsized and where their money had actually gone. The Grand Dame's financial facade was crumbling in real time, and she handled it the way she handles everything, by deflecting, denying, and serving a one-liner before walking away. And Karen isn't the only Potomac housewife who has faced serious financial scrutiny. Robin Dixon filed for bankruptcy in 2013, revealing $217,000 in debt, while only making about $2,000 a month. Her debts included nearly $29,000 in car payments for a Volkswagen that was later repossessed, over $16,000 owed to American Express, nearly $11,000 to Discover, and around $3,000 to Bloomingdale's. She also owed the IRS over $16,000 in back taxes. When she later addressed it publicly, she pushed back against the stigma, saying that people picture someone throwing money in the air at a casino when they hear the word bankruptcy, and that her situation was nothing like that. More recently, Wendy Osfo and her husband Eddie were both arrested in October 2025 on charges of insurance fraud. Prosecutors alleged the couple filed a fake burglary report while they were on vacation in Jamaica, claiming hundreds of thousands of dollars in designer goods had been stolen from their home. The investigation is still ongoing, but if the allegations are true, it would mean yet another Potomac housewife was willing to break the law to maintain the illusion of wealth. Moving down to Atlanta, the financial problems hit different because the women on RHOA were often the most vocal about their money. Nene Leakes built her entire brand on being unapologetically rich. Her catchphrase was, "I am very rich, bitch." She said it with such conviction that nobody dared to question it. But behind the scenes, the numbers told a very different story. Nene had a state tax lien filed against her in 2016 for $58,458 in back taxes. With interest and penalties, that number ballooned to over $95,000 before she finally paid it off in 2021. She also had a federal tax lien of over $824,000 for her 2014 tax return. On top of that, she was hit with claims of unpaid rent for her fashion boutique, which closed in January 2022, with $22,900 still owed. She was reminded of the outstanding balance and apparently just chose to ignore it. Then there's the case of Kim Zolciak Biermann, also from Atlanta. When Kim first appeared on the show, her lifestyle was being funded by a mysterious figure known only as Big Papa, who was later identified as a married real estate developer. She later married NFL player Kroy Biermann, and for a while, things looked stable, but after Kroy's football career ended, the money dried up fast. By December 2024, their Alpharetta mansion was in foreclosure. It sold, but the family refused to leave. In April 2024, U.S. Marshals had to physically remove Kim and Kroy from the property 3 months after the sale was finalized. They were literally dragged out of a house they no longer owned because they simply couldn't accept that the money was gone. And the case of Kenya Moore from RHOA adds yet another dimension to all of this. A source told Radar Online that Kenya would borrow expensive cars from local dealerships during filming. The dealership would loan her a luxury vehicle, and in exchange, they'd get the free publicity of their car being seen on a hit television show. Kenya got to pretend she had a high-end car. The dealership got free press. It was a mutually beneficial arrangement. But it was also completely fake. Let's also not forget what happened over on the Real Housewives of Orange County. Lynn Curtin's story is one of the saddest in the entire franchise. After the economy crashed, her husband's construction business went under, and they lost everything. Court documents from their divorce revealed that Lynn had just $100 to her name. She claimed to be spending only $515 a month, $150 on dining out, $115 on phone and internet, $50 on laundry, $100 on clothes, and $100 on entertainment. Her jewelry line was bringing in roughly $3,000 a year, which was about $8,000 below the federal poverty line. This was a woman who had appeared on a show literally called Real Housewives, presenting herself as someone living the good life, and in reality, she couldn't afford to do her own laundry more than twice a month. Alexis Bellino, from the same franchise, had similar issues. She was the housewife who loved flaunting her luxury possessions on camera, often inventorying her designer items like she was showing off a museum collection. But behind the scenes, the Bellinos were in serious financial trouble. They faced foreclosure proceedings on their home, and in 2019, Alexis was hit with a lien for over $22,000 in back taxes. And then there's Dorit Kemsley from Beverly Hills, whose tagline one season was literally, "I believe in excessive everything." Soon, that excess came with a steep price. Dorit and her husband, PK, have been dogged by reports of financial instability for years. PK had a gambling problem and filed for bankruptcy back in 2012. Their home went into pre-foreclosure at one point. Dorit has been accused by her own castmates of pretending to have money she doesn't actually have. Sutton Strack went on camera and called Dorit one of the phoniest people she'd ever met, accusing her of pretending to own fancy clothes and jewelry while owing money elsewhere. Even Jennifer Tilly, who was friends with Sutton, said on camera that if she were in a bad financial situation, she'd still show up with her Louboutins and Chanel and probably a fake Birkin if she couldn't afford the real one. That moment felt less like a defense of Dorit and more like an open admission that faking wealth is simply what these women do. And that's really what all of these stories come down to. The Real Housewives franchise creates an environment where women are incentivized to fake their wealth. The richer you appear, the more interesting you are to producers. The more designer logos you wear, the more screen time you get. The more lavish your lifestyle looks on camera, the bigger your social media following becomes, which leads to brand deals, which leads to more money, which theoretically should fix the financial problems. But it doesn't, because the spending always outpaces the earning. The image always costs more than the reality can sustain. These women get cast on a show about being rich, and then go into debt trying to look the part. Teresa wore fake Chanel to a show about wealthy women. Jen Shah wore fake Bulgari while scamming elderly people. Erica Jayne wore $25 million worth of clothes and glam funded by money stolen from crash victims. Sonia Morgan's toilets didn't work, but she kept calling herself a socialite. And Karen Huger's husband owed $1 million in back taxes, but she still insisted he was the Black Bill Gates. The franchise doesn't just attract women who fake their wealth, it practically requires it. And the ones who can't keep up the act get exposed, get sued, get arrested, or get served with eviction papers while cameras are still rolling. Play montage of various housewives in their most glamorous confessional looks. 8 seconds, no sound, use as B-roll. If you made it this far, drop a comment and let us know which financial scandal shocked you the most. Was it Teresa going to prison and coming back in fake designer? Was it Erica's $25 million glam bill funded by crash victims? Or was it Kim Zolciak getting physically removed from a foreclosed home by U.S. Marshals? Because in the world of Real Housewives, the biggest performance isn't at the reunion. It's at the bank. Like, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one.